Before the machines, before the factories, before the nation called itself free, there were women in the fields, bent under a burning southern sun, hands bleeding from the sharp teeth of the cotton plant, faces hidden under torn headscarves, their names mostly lost, their voices erased, but their labor built the foundation of America's wealth. They were enslaved women, the silent backbone of the cotton empire. From dawn until the stars returned, they toiled. The overseer's whip cracked across the humid air like a curse, each lash a reminder that their bodies did not belong to them. They belonged to the land, to the cotton, to the white men who owned both. The cotton fields were endless, miles of white stretching to the horizon. For the plantation owners, that whiteness meant profit, power, and progress. But for the women who worked there, it was a sea of suffering. They picked until their fingers split open, until their backs curved permanently toward the ground. And when their strength gave out, they were punished sometimes with the whip, sometimes with starvation, sometimes with the loss of their children, because even motherhood was not their own. An enslaved woman's child was property the moment she drew breath. Infants were torn from their mother's arms and sold at market, traded like calves, like tools. The women screamed until their voices broke, but no one listened. Their pain echoed through the cabins and the cotton rows, swallowed by the sound of profit. At night, they would return to the slave quarters, bodies aching, spirits crushed. But even there, they were not safe. The darkness brought new dangers. Plantation owners, overseers, and their sons saw them as prey. They entered cabins uninvited, their boots crushing dirt floors, their hands taking what they wanted. Resistance meant death. Submission meant survival. There was no choice, only endurance. Some women bore the children of these assaults. Light-skinned infants with their fathers' faces, a living reminder of violence that could never be spoken of. For many, those children were taken away, sold or kept as house slaves, trapped between two worlds, never belonging to either. The white men called it nature, the white women called it necessity, but the enslaved women knew the truth. It was power, pure, cruel power. Still they endured, because endurance was the only weapon they had left. They sang while they worked, soft, sorrowful songs carried on the wind. To the overseer, it was harmless humming, but to the women, it was code, prayer, resistance, memory. The songs spoke of freedom, of rivers and roads, of escape. They whispered messages to each other through rhythm, hiding rebellion in plain sight. Some women risked everything to run, pregnant or barefoot. They vanished into the night, following the stars north, chasing a freedom they might never find. Some made it, many didn't. Those who were caught were whipped until their backs were torn open, sometimes killed. Yet still, others tried, because even the chance of freedom was worth dying for. In the cotton fields, they became masters of endurance. They birthed children in the dirt and returned to work hours later. They hid food beneath their skirts, shared water with the weak, and prayed in secret circles under the moon. They found ways to love in a world built to break them. And when the Civil War came, they saw its smoke long before they saw its soldiers. Rumors spread that freedom was coming, that Abraham Lincoln's words could break chains. When the Emancipation Proclamation was read, some wept, others didn't believe it. How could freedom come from a country that had treated them like beasts? But the cotton fields didn't change overnight. For years after slavery's legal end, many of those same women remained where they were, as sharecroppers, still bound by debt, still under the same sun. Freedom had a new name, but the same masters. The nation celebrated its progress while the women continued to pick, to cook, to bear, to suffer. The plantations grew smaller, the chains thinner, but the scars stayed. Even after generations, those scars didn't fade. The daughters and granddaughters of those women carried their silence into the 20th century. They became maids, nannies, laundresses, their labor still uncredited, their worth still unseen, but their endurance, that stubborn, unbreakable, will build the foundation for something new. When the civil rights movement rose in the 1950s and 60s, the strength came from them, from the granddaughters of cotton, from women who remembered what their mothers endured, what their ancestors survived. They stood in marches, they faced police dogs and fire hoses. They refused to move, to bow, to be silent, because silence had cost too much already. But history rarely speaks their names. The stories of enslaved women are often hidden beneath the stories of men, the abolitionists, the generals, the politicians. Yet it was the women in the fields who lived the war every day. They didn't fight with rifles, they fought with their bodies, with endurance, with survival. When you touch a piece of cotton, a shirt, a blanket, a thread, you are touching their labor. You are touching centuries of pain woven into the very fabric of the modern world. Cotton was America's gold, and enslaved women were its miners. Their bodies were the machines of empire, their wombs its factories, and yet, they received no monuments, no medals, no graves with names. Their contribution was measured only in profit, their suffering buried under numbers and ledgers. But they existed, they laughed when they could, they prayed in whispers, they taught their children songs of hope even when they knew those children might be sold. They braided freedom into their daughters' hair, hid dreams inside lullabies, and when one generation fell, the next rose still scarred, still fighting. They were the invisible architects of America, the unacknowledged mothers of its economy, the silent women of the cotton fields. Every breath of endurance they took shaped the nation's history. Every tear shed in those endless fields fed the soil that still grows beneath our feet. The story of America cannot be told without them, and yet they were denied even their own humanity. We often say that slavery built America, but it was these women who held it together. They carried the burden of both labor and life, of pain and creation. They endured for generations so that one day, their descendants might stand tall in the sun without chains. Freedom came too late for most of them, but their legacy remains in every act of resistance, every voice that dares to speak, every woman who refuses to be silenced. They were not weak, they were warriors in plain sight, and even though their names were lost, their story still breathes in the wind that moves through the southern fields, in the rhythm of history that remembers what men tried to erase. They were the cotton fields' silent women, unseen, unheard, but never truly gone, because history may forget their names, but the earth they bled upon never will.